This is HBR News number 393. NBA bends the knee to the Wammens. Pronouns on the resume might be a bad idea, where we reflect on the stories of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Happy International Women's Month, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. That's right. Women are too much to reduce down to a single day. We're gonna give them the whole month, so you better get ready to simp, because that's king shit. So anyway, I am your host, Brian Martinez, and I'm joined by, as always, my austere patriarch and our handmaiden, Dr. Randa McCam and Hannah Wallen. Mike J might show up today, so we might see a Mike J later, but but whatever he has to do, so it's no problem. We have a great show lineup for you guys today, so please be sure to continue the conversations both in the chat as well as the comment section. On this week's HBR News Show, we have more Hose Mad of the Week. This week, we're going to be talking about the NBA having specifically the Toronto Raptors having the gall to honor women for their ability to reproduce for International Women's Month. How putting your pronouns in your resume might actually harm your chances of getting the job. Sensitivity readers are at it again. We'll go into that in more detail later in the show and more, so stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So this is what I have pulled up, because I want to talk about this, but I think I'm just going to make it an after-show topic. So there is this new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated movie that's coming out. It has an art style or an animation style that's very reminiscent of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, if you've ever seen that. As well as the new Puss in Boots, I think, is also done in the same way. So it's like the new trend. And I was okay with it until I saw April O'Neil. Because, this is obviously some feminist shit going on. She's overweight. She's, unattractive. It's nothing like the original. And so there's this article saying that this Mutant Mayhem trailer has fans buzzing over Ayo Edebiri's April O'Neil, and I wanna talk about it. So we're gonna do that in the after show. So please be sure to, if you want to join us in that discussion, either as a member of the audience or a participant, please consider becoming a Badger yourself. And by participant, I mean if you pay at a high enough level, you can come into the live chat and talk directly to us and give us your opinions. Which could be good for the soul, I think. So in order to do that, you have to go to www.feedthebadger.com and set up a monthly subscription. The lowest amount that you give will get you into the Discord, and you'll be able to watch all of the after shows or patron shows on YouTube. So you'll get a link to an unlisted stream, and you'll be able to watch there. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find yourself unable to find our content because YouTube finally dropped the axe on our channels, go to badgerfeed.com. That's badgerfeed.com. And that's where we live. So, that's where our content lives, is what I meant to say. So, with all that out of the way, I guess we should just jump into the stories. So, no Mike J? No? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off. Toronto Raptors. I believe it's the Canadian basketball team. The only Canadian basketball team. They faced backlash after they posted a short video celebrating Women's History Month. Well, it's really women's... It's actually... I think it's... You know what? They're probably going to call it a History Month, because I thought it was International Women's Month. And
nope, it'll have International Women's Day, Women's History Month, and there's probably some week or another that they're celebrating women's this or women's that. They really
celebrating. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna extra celebrate it.
Because women's egos can't fit into one celebration.
And Rainbow Month is just there because of feminists who hate cis people. And Black History Month is just there because of feminists who hate white men. All of this shit is because of feminists.
I think they all celebrate all of the months, though, like in general. A good progressive does that. So, okay.
Every month is Oikophobia Month.
Yeah. So I'm going to play this video. Have you guys seen this already?
Nope.
Yes. Yeah, I saw it when you posted it.
I'm just going to how do I do this? Where's my controls? Oops. Sorry. There is some controls for this. Aren't there in Discord? Oh, wait. Oh, I see. Okay. Brave. There it goes. All right. And so go ahead and join my stream so that you can see this too. It's very short, so there isn't anything to it. Okay? And yeah, let me know when you all are ready, and I'll hit play.
Okay.
It's very short.
I'll just watch it on Twitter as per the link.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Girls run the world because they're the only one that can procreate. They birth everybody. All women are great because they're all queens.
Oh, God. Why did he say that?
Pete.
They're all queens, guys. Okay.
Do they realize that two people are usually involved in procreation directly, and when you don't have two people directly involved, there is still a second person involved, just indirectly?
I don't think he knows what procreation means.
It takes a man. Like, insemination requires semen. That's why it's called insemination. Like,
if she breathes. All right, so
sorry,
has a pulse.
I said he just now. I said he doesn't know what procreation means. I don't know. Is that a he? I don't. Is that the female team at this point?
No, those are all men, but they are Canadian. So, but anyway, the Toronto Raptors, the only Canadian basketball team competing in the NBA, took the video down and issued an apology. Now, I mean, we'll talk about this after I'm done with the write-up, but they had to apologize for that. Okay? So here's what the statement that they released says. We are an organization that prides itself on doing the right thing when it comes to inclusion and representation. We made a mistake on Tuesday. Read the statement from the team published by the Toronto Sun. Quote, our sincerest apologies to our players, our staff, and our fans. Will work to do better today and every day after, end quote. Most of this backlash came from people saying women should be valued for more than just their ability to give birth. Therefore, the video failed to show proper respect for Wammen's History Month.
Oh, is that what it is?
How can you, though? How can you respect women for more than being able to give birth if all women are queens, right? That means China fucking Arnold, who put her fucking baby in the fucking microwave, is a queen. She is equal to me.
Queens have done shit like that all throughout history.
You guys have no idea.
The equivalent of a microwave. I don't know.
They should apologize. They should apologize to every woman that had to hear that women who molest children, women who sell their children, are as good as women who do 2 and 3 jobs to feed their children, who marry the fathers of their children, who love their families, who take care of the people around them. The women who are sitting in jail right now for beating their babies to death are just as good as everybody else. Like, I'm so mad I'm shaking. This is the shit that we're subjected to today. You guys have no idea how much it pisses me off. The lack of agency that we're subjected to every fucking day from these people.
Yep.
Just like, there is a point at which it becomes sickening and disgusting and angering beyond words. I've got plenty of words. I've said some of nicest ones a few times just now. But I mean, I'm sorry to like go off the deep end on this, but you have to be kidding me. All women are queens. No, all women are not queens. Some women are absolute motherfucking scumbuckets. Some women are the lowest things on the planet. Some women are worse than pond scum that kills all the fish in the pond, right? Many women are absolute assholes. Many women are bad people. And the women who are good people, who do their best to be good people, women who deal with flaws every day that they have to fight tooth and nail to stay good people. Like women like me who have tempers like mine, who have to deal with shit like this and not go off and set somebody's car on fire, or stay off of Twitter 2 months because they're mad about the not being able to help friends with illnesses. Like, what good is doing the things that we do? What good is having self-control? What good is striving to feed our families and take care of our loved ones? What good is not being the worst Karen at the grocery store if we're just going to be treated like we're the same as the woman who puts her baby in the microwave or sells her children to pedophiles?
Mm-hmm.
What's the point?
Yeah.
See, I watched that video and I heard what this story was about, and I assumed, like perhaps a lot of you did while watching that video, that the offended party in question was, the trans lobby.
Yeah.
Erupting in a guffawing outrage of, are you saying men can't be birthing people? Boo this man! And so on. But no, it turns out it's good old-fashioned feminists doing what they've always done and getting offended by compliments. Mm-hmm. Even compliments that were specifically asked for. Does my ass look big in these jeans? No, dear, of course not. You would never look fat. What, so you're judging me on how fat I look? That's the only thing that's important to you? That's so typical of the patriarchal body negativity that women have to deal with every day. How dare you? And so on and so forth. Men eventually learn that there is no right answer to that question, but you can't even get away with it by not answering that question. They will also interpret that as the worst possible answer to the question, even though it's not an answer. So those of us with any ability to articulate such things diplomatically have to go over the whole twisted scenario, top to bottom, and say something like, look, you don't need to ask me that question. To me, you are beautiful. Inside and out, my darling, my angel, my goddess, and anyone who doesn't accept you as you are is the one in the wrong. Whether you're fat or skinny or anything in between, you are perfect the way you are, and I love you unconditionally and eternally. And even then,
otherwise known as the gift of Blarney.
Yeah, and even then, she'll probably still go, so you're saying I do look fat in these jeans? We're not all. I'm quite lucky, of course. The love of my life doesn't have these insecurities, but for whatever reason, a lot of women do. Needless to say, the ordinary men who are not capable of such romantic oration will forever be trapped in this hall of gaslighting mirrors without any hope of any escape from the torment. And if you think this is a frivolous example, it's nothing compared with this, what we just watched and what we just heard about in response to it. Why do you think it's true that women run the world? Well, I guess it's because of the things women can do that men can't do. The first thing that comes to mind is that they birth everybody. So you're saying the only thing women are good for is birthing people? You see what I mean?
Yep.
Just the same energy, but bigger in scale, considerably bigger in scale. As we know, the only correct answer is anything a man can do, a woman can do better, and in high heels. Mm-hmm. Anything short of this answer is unacceptable misogyny. And it's not it's a recent phenomenon. It's a message that's been drilled into us since the dawn of Generation X. as far as I can remember, it's probably before. Since the dawn of Generation Z, it is the unquestionable canon of our modern religion. What are women good for? Everything. What are men good for? Nothing. End of discussion. In this age of the aforementioned trans hysteria, where any statement about men and women can get you cancelled because trans something, it's easy to forget that the old-fashioned feminism still has this ever-strengthening claw grip on our society that it ever did. It's not just men getting gaslit from all directions from their wives and girlfriends. It's all men everywhere getting gaslit from every conceivable dimension by this incorporeal concept of Wammens. People speak of late-stage capitalism, but what this is late-stage feminism. The trans lobby can fuck you over, the TERFs can fuck you over, and the OG feminists can still fuck you over. Don't give the benefit of the doubt to the OG feminists, like they had the right idea in the first. No, as long as you're doing that, they will keep spawning these increasingly impossible ultimatums on you, and it will be nothing but torture. For future reference, gentlemen, the correct answer is fuck your genes, dear. Fuck your fat cells. Your insecurities are not my problem. Deal with it. Mic drop. It helps if you have a mic to drop.
Just don't drop. No dropping. But no, this is feminism, but it's not all feminism. I wish it was only feminism that was at fault for this. This is squarely women's fault. And why do men think women rule the world? Because women tell them that women rule the world. And if men say no, here's all the things we do, and here's what we see you doing, then they're sexist and women have a temper tantrum, right? If men say, well, we do our part, women have a temper tantrum. If men point out that, hey, most of you guys don't run for office, women have a temper tantrum. If men say, well, we're the ones in office and we're not going to do that thing that you said we should do because here's all the shit that can go wrong with it, women have a temper tantrum. And they march in the streets and they hold up signs with genitalia on them and dress funny and show their tits to everybody because that's totally activism.
Yep.
Like, that's activism, guys. Look at my tits. Activism. And they're not even good tits. It's usually the worst tits in the bunch. Like, here, look at the worst tits in the bunch. Activism. Behave or we'll show you these again. Like, that's what we get from women. And for every woman that is out there striving to actually live equality, who's doing a hard job or working more than one job, paying as close to half the bills in her home as she can or more, there's 10 other women whining about the pay gap and calling it misogynistic if men aren't singing their praises actively at every second of every day. You can't criticize women. We'll probably get some sort of thing against us for me saying that there are women who are assholes. Right? That just acknowledging that women can be less than perfect, any women at all can be less than perfect, gets you in trouble. Why would men not think women run the world? They're not allowed to say otherwise.
Yep.
I think Allison's comparison in her threat narrative series between men and janissaries is so spot on. It's more spot on than any other way we could describe the relationship between men and women.
Yeah.
Where they were enslaved, but they were enslaved in positions of importance so that they felt that they were not slaves. They weren't allowed to not do these things. They didn't have freedom. They were
Mhm.
sold into this. They were in captivity. They were just, they were important.
Yep.
People relied on them. They were caregivers, right? They were taking care of their community. But they were slaves.
So I guess the lesson is don't compliment women. Don't talk to them, because these guys I'm sure that they innocently believe that if they say something nice about women that is unique to women, which is their ability to carry babies, although it's a bit like it's a little dumb, but I don't have a problem with it. Like it wasn't going to spare them from women, because women are mad about everything. Like they're always looking for something to bitch about, and I think that's where the context of that word bitch comes from. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, hell, I'm still mad that they were taught that they have to think that way. Must
Yeah.
say something nice about women. Why? Why do you have to say something nice about women? What is it about women that obligates you to say nice things?
Mm-hmm.
To say anything at all?
No, I agree.
Are we obligated to say nice things about men? I can think of all kinds of nice things to say about the male population in general, right?
Yeah.
Even when feminists tried to turn the creation of World Toilet Day into a joke against men because it was on International Men's Day, like, are you kidding me? Thank God for indoor plumbing. Thank God
really.
for men creating that. Can you imagine what life would be like without it, with a population this big? But yeah, nobody feels obligated to say good things about men. People can't
No.
even appreciate the things that men do. Some of the humongous things that men do. That is a huge benefit to society. Immeasurable, really. We've
Mm-hmm.
no idea. The deadliest bacteria in the world today, right now, is a form of E. coli that is immune to all forms of antibiotics. There is nothing that can kill it, and it just kills you.
Wow.
You die of sepsis from it. And this is something that would be this kind of thing that would be everywhere if we didn't have men to think of things like indoor plumbing.
Yep.
But we aren't even allowed to appreciate that. We have to say nice things about women. And it's not that women are all terrible and don't ever deserve to have anything nice said. But does it mean anything if you're basically training guys that they have to do this?
Yeah, and there's also a big difference between saying something nice about or to a specific individual woman for something that she has done, and saying nice things about women in general. So, yeah. Well, I guess women exist now, at least for now, and it is International Women's Month, but I have this feeling that the people who are going to get most spotlighted on International Women's Month are actually going to be trans women, which I think is great. Because they're going to be Woman of the Year and all that. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the trans women taking all of the credit away from regular women.
You're assuming the Overton window is going to get pushed to the point at which it smashes. I'm not quite so confident.
I'd like to see that, but yeah,
never underestimate the ability of feminists to keep doubling and tripling down on the lies.
Oh, for sure. I think that it's only a matter of time before feminists declare trans women, like essentially a product of the patriarchy. That's what it's already started.
They've done that already. Yeah. TERFs have already done it, and actually conservative feminists are doing it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a product of the patriarchy. It's apparently a product of men's rights activists.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'll be honest.
Both sides of this argument, like the TERFs are saying the intersexualists are men's rights advocates, the intersexualists are saying the TERFs are men's rights activists, and both sides are going to push on this. Mm-hmm. And guess who's going to get it in the neck? Men's rights activists.
Yeah, MRAs. Right. Yeah.
Hey,
All right.
I'll own it to a degree. I mean, if you stand me between two women and one of them sold her children to a child molester, and the other one is a trans woman who pays her bills and pays her taxes and has friends and has family and has never been in any kind of trouble, just wants to live her life and do her thing,
Mm-hmm.
I'll take that woman and we'll have sisterhood.
Mm-hmm. All right.
You know,
So we're gonna
we
move
don't need
on.
the person selling their kids to pedophiles.
Yeah.
Like that I'll stand side by side with the other one. And that's fine. The only problem that I have with the whole trans activism thing is you now have people involved who don't care about the people with gender dysphoria who have been dealing with it for years and years and dealing with a medical profession that may have been just taking advantage of them, or hasn't got the best treatment for them and so on. They're more interested in exploiting the "you can't say anything about this topic" phenomenon for attention and for power and for the ability to do things like get away with crimes, right? That's taking advantage.
Yeah. All right, so let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. I gotta move on because we have a couple more to get through. So yeah, I look forward to seeing your thoughts on this. Should this basketball team have even bothered to send out a message if it was just gonna get them in trouble anyway? Let us know what you guys think. All right, moving on to the next story. So I don't have a write-up for this, so I'm gonna have to read the article, or at least part of it. But resumes, including they, them pronouns, are more likely to be overlooked, according to a new report. Inclusivity shouldn't just be present in the workplace, it should be practiced during the hiring process as well. But unfortunately, non-binary job seekers are facing clear biases during their job search. According to a new report from business.com, a business resource platform, over 80% of non-binary people believe that identifying as non-binary would hurt their job search. Similarly, 51% believe that their gender identity has affected their workplace experience very or somewhat negatively. So this is an opinion from the non-binary individual so far.
So
maybe there's one on employers that could confirm this. Ryan McGonigal, Director of Industry Research at Business.com and author of the report, says these statistics show just how much work there is to do around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace. We clearly have more work to do on several fronts. Over the past 10 years, DEIB, so I guess we've just expanded the DEI thing to include a B, efforts have been prioritized by many companies. However, the results of this study and past research shows that teams in most industries aren't proportionately representative of the U.S. population. McGonigal tells CNBC, make it, quote, and worse, many people, like the non-binary individuals we spoke with in our research, feel like they don't belong, end quote. So, and then I guess they did, Business went a step further by sending 2 identical phantom resumes to 180 unique job postings that were explicitly open to entry-level candidates in an effort to test whether or not the inclusion of gender-neutral pronouns impacts the employer's perceived resumes. So both featured a gender-ambiguous name, Taylor Williams. The only difference between the test and the control resumes was the presence of gender pronouns in the test version. So what happened? The phantom resume received 8% less interest. The one with pronouns. Sorry, I have a hiccup or something. The phantom resume, including pronouns, received 8% less interest than the one that didn't have pronouns, and fewer interview and phone screening invitations. According to the report, over 64% of the companies that received these resumes were equal opportunity employers, something that made the results even more worrisome. The law makes it clear that you cannot base any employment decision, hiring, terminating, or otherwise, based on their gender identity, McGonigal says. It's incredibly disappointing and unethical that many of the hiring managers in our study would disqualify a candidate for being authentic. I think that's basically the gist of it. Is this company
hiring managers?
What was that?
Hiring managers. You have to understand where in the company a hiring manager works. The hiring manager is part of the human resources department.
Mm-hmm.
Human resources is not a resource for humans. It is a resource for the employer. The job of the human resources department is to prevent the employer from getting sued. So if you have a resume that says on the resume, I have a particular sensitivity that is going to be a point of contention between me and other employees. For instance, you put on your resume that you have an anxiety disorder, or you put on the resume that you have a deeply held religious belief. You put on the resume that you have a hobby that is particularly unliked by other people, or that is, particularly strange. Any of those things, they're going to look at that and consider that there will be conflict in the workplace over this detail on your personhood, whether it is legitimate or not, whether it is fair or not, whether it is discriminatory or not. If you are applying to a workplace where there's lots of different people and you put something on your resume that basically flags you as a potential conflict in the workplace issue ahead of time, you have just eliminated yourself from that job. And your resume has to be absolutely stellar to overcome that. And it has to be good enough that, nobody else that's applying for the same job will have a better resume than yours. And if they sent two identical resumes, then they've eliminated the person with the potential conflict in many, many cases. And the only thing that would create favor for the pronoun person in that instance is if the hiring manager is ideologically woke and expects everybody else in the workplace to also be ideologically woke. So it doesn't matter whether it's fair or unfair. It doesn't really matter whether it's politically correct or not. You're looking at a feature of our litigious society. You screwed yourself out of a job by pointing yourself out as the person most likely to sue.
Yeah. Mike?
Yeah, I just wish when I was trying to figure out what to do as a university degree, I wish more of my teachers would have warned me. Look, if all you have on your curriculum vitae is BA honors in drama, not only will it not help you get a job, but employers are going to read that and they're going to think, this guy's a fucking drama student. There's no way in the hell we're going to hire him. He's obviously one of these sorts of people. Not only that it makes me underqualified for most jobs, but it also makes me overqualified even for dog's body jobs, like stacking shelves in Aldi or some shit.
Yeah.
And I did apply for a shelf stacking job in Aldi, but didn't get anything back. And that's the, I don't know if you can call it a catch-22 situation, but if that's on your resume, then you paint yourself into a very tight corner in which nobody gives. And it's not as if there's any jobs that do give a shit about you having a drama degree. Like if you want to be an actor, they're not going to look at your fucking resume. They're going to look at what you've actually done in terms of acting, which is nothing if all you've done is a degree in drama? And it's the same with all sorts of degrees, like fucking philosophy or something.
Illustration.
Is there any
what I
employer in the world who's going to see, ooh, he's got a BA honors in philosophy, we're going to hire him in a second? No.
Mhm.
So bear this in mind, folks. If you're going to go to university, it had better be something that has any relevance to
Yeah.
any conceivable fucking job. And it's the same with having pronouns or whatever. There's no job that requires you to have certain pronouns. There's no reason it would. So until the government starts enforcing these things on your behalf, which it shouldn't, then there's this good old-fashioned thing called meritocracy. See if you can play to that once in your fucking lives.
There is one exception to this rule. If you want to work for a university, then having a degree doesn't matter what degree it is. Any degree will get you your foot further in the door than not having a degree. You could have a degree in unmasked underwater nose picking, and you would be more likely to be hired on at a university than someone with 20 years experience in the job that you're applying for. Because that's how universities work. Every place else, and that's why they don't tell you that your degree is going to be useless, because in their world, just having the letters behind your name doesn't matter what the degree is in. Doesn't matter how hard or not hard you had to work for it. So in their world, it's prestigious, just out of hand. And they don't understand that your degree in unmasked underwater nose picking is not going to get you any kind of a job outside of the university world.
Yep. But I wouldn't work in a college. I don't want to be around those fucking serpents, those barracudas. But I think my first thought when I saw this article, I was thinking, I bet that it's in most cases with employers, when they see the pronouns on the resume, they go, oh no, we don't want that. Like those people are going to bring drama and trouble and all this shit. Because I'm not saying this is true of all non-binary, gender fluid, transgender types. But if you are curious about them, you'll look on TikTok or YouTube or something. And you're going to basically have a rude awakening, and you're going to be like, no, I'm not doing that. That person's going to bring me trouble. And I mean, I'm reminded of a job I used to have before I started doing this. I worked at an art supply store, which was like the best I could get as an artist, which is basically the same useless degree, by the way, as, drama or whatever. But I had an employee. We had a team of employees, but the employee that always gave us the most trouble was the feminist lesbian. She was constantly throwing fits. She was super emotional. I had to send her home, or she would ask to go home, and I couldn't make her stay. She was just so much trouble. And, I think that employers, they probably think these non-binary people are going to be a problem, because they're going to insist that everybody use their pronouns. They're going to, and if you worked in like a communist bookstore, which there's plenty of those, you'll probably get hired, right? If you worked at a lesbian cafe, like the one that had to close down because they didn't get enough business, you probably get hired, right? If you worked at like some vegan restaurant that also had to close down because they weren't serving meat, you probably get a job there. It depends on the community you're entering. You probably would even get an advantage for putting your pronouns. But regular jobs, like the majority of jobs, I think that a lot of people are like, she's telling me her pronouns, and it's they, them, or whatever. They're not going to hire them. They're like, this is going to bring so much trouble. There's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be all kinds of shit. So that's what I think it is. I think it's especially small business owners. I think they're just trying to be practical and they're avoiding, conflict with the NBs. So
they don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
If all it has to happen, Edith from accounting forgets your pronouns one time because she's been doing this for 27 years and she's almost ready to retire and she's never had to deal with this before.
Mm-hmm.
Or she misreads them because her eyes aren't as good as they used to be, and they never were great. You never know. And that's all it takes. It doesn't have to be intentional. That's the worst part about harassment policy in the workplace.
Yep.
You don't actually have to do anything wrong to be accused and found guilty of wrongdoing in the workplace. All that has to happen is that some other oversensitive person or even a normally sensitive person just gets something wrong, takes something wrong, hears something wrong, or has a particular sensitivity in a particular area. Like that's it.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you're in the hot seat.
Yep. All right. So anyway, guys, let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story. Do you think that it's unfair that, people who put pronouns in their resume are, they appear to get less, they appear to be less likely to get a call back and much less an interview? Let us know what you guys think about that in the comments. We're going to move on to the next story. All right, so now we're going to get into like crazy ass women. A 31-year-old woman who admitted to having sex, and I put having sex in quotes, and this is actually how it was written on the website where the story comes from, with a 13-year-old boy.
That would be rape.
That would be rape. And becoming pregnant with his child. So she got pregnant from a 13-year-old boy that she raped, and she's not going to be facing any jail time. Andrea Serrano of Colorado was facing sexual assault charges. By the way, it's not sexual assault, it's rape. But because it's a woman that's the aggressor, I guess we don't have a word for that. So we're just going to call it sexual assault. Charges after her arrest in 2022. After agreeing to a plea deal with prosecutors, the original charges were dropped to a lesser offense that does not require any jail time. So not only was her initial charge like lower than any man would have gotten, but they were dropped again. So she did a plea deal and now she's apparently not going to jail at all. From KKTV, the victim's mother, so the 13-year-old boy's mother said, quote, "I feel like my son is robbed of his childhood. Now he's having to be a father. He's a victim and he's going to have to live with that for the rest of his life," end quote. She questions why Serrano, the woman, the rapist, won't face prison time. Quote, "I feel like if she was a man and he was a little girl, it would definitely be different." No shit.
Yeah, boy, would it be different.
Yeah. They would be seeking...
If he survived.
Assuming that, yeah. They would be seeking more. I feel like he is not a woman. They are not. They are having compassion for her, end quote, the victim's mother said. Serrano must register as a sex offender, and she could face a requirement of 10 years to life on sex offender intensive supervised probation.
She could, yeah, she could. I'd love to hear what the so-called pro-choice crowd has to say on this matter. I should think hardly anyone would seriously argue that any male should have the right to enforce any woman to have an abortion, but I can't help but remember that when we bring up this subject, so many pro-choice people will predictably bring up the trump card that is, but what about rape and incest? Even though that accounts for a negligibly minuscule proportion of abortions,
Less than
we
1%.
yeah, we go ahead and conclude that any woman can have an abortion for any reason of her choosing, up to and including 9 months, because of the existence of that negligible proportion. So what if the man or the boy was the one who was raped? What choices does he have? Well, that's different. It's her body, her choice. It's not his body. Well, it's his bodily fluid. And we're not just talking about piss or spit or watery snot. It's a bodily fluid that contains millions of copies of his body's blueprints. Given that intellectual property is such a contested issue, maybe a man's genetic property could be held in a similar regard, at least in the event that it is stolen from him, especially when he's underage. Again, I'm not saying that any woman should ever be forced to have an abortion, not even by the boy she raped. But a pregnancy should not be a mitigating factor when it comes to the legal consequences faced by a rapist.
I've asked this question on Twitter. Should a male rape victim, have the right to force his rapist to have an abortion? I've asked pro-choice people that question on Twitter, and some of them have said yes.
Ugh. Yeah, I bet they did. But the whole situation sucks from every angle. You can't keep the baby in prison with her.
She shouldn't have custody. She's a child molester.
Yeah, and you can't just leave it in the stewardship of the boy she raped, not if he doesn't consent to that either. And you probably shouldn't consign the baby to control of the state either. The state fucks up everything it touches, sometimes literally. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can give the baby to, some kind of loving and willing and voluntary foster care or something. Like I said, none of this is ideal, but that's all the more reason to punish these female rapists for the shite state of affairs in which they put everyone around them. The whole point of the justice system is to prevent offenders from repeat offending. And if she gets let off with nothing but a soft slap on the wrist by virtue of the very fruits of the rape she committed, then what's to stop her from reoffending? Nothing. It makes you wonder how often this happens, doesn't it? We encounter a lot of these kinds of stories here at Honey Badger Radio. It's only through the conduit of other media sources who feel like covering these stories. God knows what the scale of it all really is. For every one of these cases we actually hear about, how many cases are there that we don't hear about? How many female rapists are out there, free as a bird, raising their rape babies with impunity? I dread to think. That's why I try not to think.
Well, especially because
I just drink.
Yeah,
just remember, guys.
Especially because there's no accountability.
Just remember, all women are queens.
Yeah, all women
are wonderful.
That's a queen.
Women can do no wrong, and women rule the world because women are the best, right? That's you can see why I got pissed as fuck at that. Like, you can see why a woman who strives to listen to her better angels and fight her demons would get mad about somebody saying all women are wonderful when there are women who do shit like this. And honestly, I don't know that her pregnancy factored into her getting her lesser offense. This is what Sonia Starr was talking about in her research. Women are more likely, just by virtue of being women, to get plea deals like this, whereas men are more likely, just by virtue of being men, to be pressured into taking plea deals that guarantee punishment because the prosecutor doesn't want to deal with the chance that they might not be found guilty. The prosecutor doesn't have a strong case. And that's how you end up with men taking plea deals to plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit and ending up in jail for years
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't get the death penalty or so that they don't get life in jail. This situation, everything about this situation is nauseating. Here you had a woman who is old enough to be, if she had been a teen mom, old enough to be the mother of a child older than the boy that she had sex with.
Yep.
Right? I had friends in high school who had babies by the time they graduated, had babies by the time they were 15. Not at my school. There were kids that went to my school that had babies that young. I had one friend who had a kid at 16, and actually became a grandmother before she was 36. And that this woman's 31, right? She's got to be old enough to look at a 13-year-old and see a child, not even a young man. 13-year-old boys look like children. So this woman is a pedophile. This is a pedophile. This is a child molester.
Yep.
If she has custody of this baby, then they've given custody of a baby to a child molester. And
Yeah.
she gets out of jail because woman.
That's the only thing I could figure. There was a plea deal. They took it, and she's not going to see a cell. Another thing
Now,
is,
there's
I don't
another
know.
aspect to this. We don't know the case. Obviously, it's probably not been reported. But when a child molester rapes a boy and gets pregnant, and then goes on welfare or just goes and asks the state, the boy can get hit with a child support obligation.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We've
This
done a
boy-
story on that
yeah.
where
We've done a few stories on it.
yeah, where
The-
an underage boy was raped by a woman, and the woman got pregnant, and she basically got child support from a child, basically. And I
Yeah.
think that could happen here.
In this case, a 13-year-old is not in I don't think any state of the union old enough to legally hold like a full-time job or a part-time job or anything like that. He might be able to get a paper route. He might be able to mow people's lawns if kids still go around their neighborhoods and small towns and do that. But he's not going to be able to pay that. His parents are going to be paying that child support.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst thing about it for him is, he's stuck in a situation. He's still a child. 13-year-old boys, that's 13 years old is the age when it's funny to snap somebody's bra.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think far enough into it that, oh, hey, that might actually hurt. Until, the girl kind of turns around and looks at you and says, that hurt. And then most boys, like, after they've done it the first time, never do it again, because that if you want to slap a boy without actually touching him, tell him something he did to you hurts. And that's about as close as you can get to slapping him right across the face.
Mm-hmm.
They're immediately sorry. And so yeah, he's just a few years past, believing in things
Santa
like
Claus?
Santa Claus and the
Uh-huh.
Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny. It's insane. And sad. And his whole life now has changed the way your life changes when you become a parent. And
Mhm.
at that age where he's young enough to not be able to fully consider the consequences of an impulse before he acts on it.
Mhm.
He's got to make a decision whether or not he wants to go for custody. He's got to make a decision whether he's willing to put the child up for adoption. And his parents might make that decision without his consent. And in some states, they have the legal right to do that. And he won't get any say in the matter. Right. So this child, his child, could be getting raised by a pedophile, the pedophile that raped him, or his parents could take custody of the child and he could be raised alongside his own child, or the child could be taken away from him without his consent, or he could have to make the devastating decision to go for adoption. And then in some states, the mother can fight him on that, even though, in some states she can't legally have custody because the child was conceived in rape. But in some states she can, and she can go for that custody. So it's a really awful situation for him. And she just gets off on supervised probation. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
She's free. Obviously, if she was like a teacher or something, she isn't anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, she can still go out and get a job. She can earn a living. She can go places she wants to go and do things she wants to do, with some limitations because of being on probation, but not the kind of limitations a man would have.
Right.
She's not in jail.
Yep. A man would have been like, he would have gotten worse than jail. But that's just, that's the thing. That's why these stories, they may start to feel repetitive because we keep doing them if we come across them, but we have to, because we need to shine a light on that. Most of the time these are reported locally, so it's like this one, I believe, is a local station that reported this story, and not like the cable news networks or anything like that. So
what would happen if the sexes were reversed on this?
Yeah, this would be all over
exactly
the news.
what would happen, because
he wouldn't
look
just
at
get
what
sent to
happened in
prison.
the
He'd
Brock
get
Turner case.
raped
No, I'm
to
talking
death
about
in
the
prison.
protests.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the protests. Like, if a man actually were given a sentence like this after raping a 13-year-old girl, go back to the Brock Turner case where there were questions about that case. Like, that case was not cut and dried.
Oh yeah.
People talked about it like it was cut and dried, but it was not cut and dried. It wasn't black and white. This is black and white. It is always wrong for an adult to have sex with a 13-year-old.
Yeah, she admitted
right?
it.
Especially an adult in their 30s to have sex with a 13-year-old. It is always rape to do that, right? And if a man had gotten arrested for that and then managed to get a plea deal that kept him out of jail, the reaction to the Brock Turner case was such that the judge is no longer on the bench, right?
Yep.
They both harassed and reported, basically litigated, to get him off the bench until he was off the bench. And when Turner came home, they showed up in his neighborhood, a neighborhood full of other people that were not him, were not members of his family, didn't have anything to do with him or his case, and had no control over the situation at all, had their own kids in their neighborhood, and protested on the street outside his house with guns strong enough to be able to fire through brick and mortar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the level of protest. Not one word from feminists on this. Not one word from women's advocates on this.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody gives a fuck but us. Just the men's rights movement.
Well, yeah, and again, the purpose of this is to simply show something really common sense, which is women can also be monsters. And so there it is.
And they get away with it. They get away with it.
Mm-hmm. And they get away with it, yes. And that is
if women
also
don't
true.
have agency, if you can't hold women accountable for their actions, boys get hurt. This boy is now like 8 times more likely to commit suicide than he was before this happened to him.
Yeah.
Up to 44 times more likely to become a substance abuser.
Yep.
In the meantime, most conservatives are busy arguing about men using women's bathrooms and shit
and how
like
that endangers women.
They've just skipped right past the head vampire.
Yeah.
Just to remind everybody, by the way, women are so terrified of encountering a man in the bathroom that half of women have admitted to going into men's restrooms when the line is too long for the ladies.
Of course.
They're very, very terrified there. So terrified that they go right in there with all the men.
All right. So, anyways, let us know what you guys think about this story in the comments. I'm gonna go through and read some super chat and a super chow that I got, and then we'll go on to the final story. So, Zeranx on super chats gave us $5 and said, "Remember that Mary Kay Letourneau did this to her now ex-husband twice, starting when he was 13 in 1997." Yes. How can we forget about Mary Kay? They made a movie about it.
I think it was after she passed away. I think they got divorced. I don't remember whether she passed away or they got divorced. I think she died.
Yeah.
But he was interviewed and like had this epiphany in the middle of the interview where he finally understood that their whole relationship from beginning to aftermath was abusive, and he was never on equal footing, and she was using him. And the way that he talked about it in the interview, you just like your heart just would go out to him, because he didn't understand what was being done to him until it was all over, and it was really heartbreaking.
Yeah. All right, another super chat. Albatross gives us $2 and says, "All women are queens."
Yes.
Yeah. Queen shit from the planet asshole.
Yeah. And then I got a super chow from Meredith G, who gives us $5, and she says, "HBR News 393, honey for the Badgers. When everyone is special, no one is. We need to stop this BS of the fake holidays of no meaning to celebrate people for existing. This is all an exercise in people who are looking for everyone to validate their existence like you get your parking validated." Yeah. It's
hell.
It's playing into narcissism, in my opinion. I think that if we're
just
gonna honor things, they should be like deeds, not people.
I don't even want to be special with the way that women are treated as special because of being women. I don't even want to be special. I want to be a good person. And I don't have to have random strangers telling me that I'm a good person, right? Just like you don't have to have random strangers come up and tell you that you're a good cook. Having somebody in your family sit back after they ate something that you cooked and look content is enough. That tells you right there that you're a good cook. Right?
Yep.
And having people that you have helped in your life be content or be in a situation that's better than they would have been if you hadn't done whatever help that you did. That's enough. Right? That's all it takes to to be satisfied with being a good person. And it's not always easy, right? There are plenty of opportunities to be an asshole. I get dozens of them every day, even when I don't leave the house. But you can't know if you're doing right if nobody ever can tell you anything else. Oh yes, you're doing right. Everything you do is right by virtue of you doing it. That's not helpful. Tell me if my ass looks fat, right? I go to the doctor that I go to because he will tell me when my health problems are because I'm fat. And then I know that if I want those health problems to get better, I got to lose weight.
Yeah.
Instead of putting me on a bunch of drugs. The whole thing of women all being queens is so infuriating because we need to be told when our asses are fat, and we need to be told when we're being asses, or we will be all the time.
And this, by the way, is why I have this issue with the very notion of a good person or a bad person. You can be a good cook by virtue of being good at cooking. You can be a good runner by virtue of being good at running. It's because these are agent nouns. You know what an agent noun is, right? It's a noun that only exists because of the verb to which it pertains. You can be a good men's rights advocate, but person is not a verb. One does not person.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't like this idea of being a good or bad person. You can do good things, you can do bad things, and even that is a somewhat reductive way of describing an action. But I think I just find it so reductive to call anyone a good person or a bad person.
Mm.
You can do downright evil things, and it's meaningless to me to call you an evil person. You're just a person who does downright evil things, or a person who does good things. You can measure actions in a way that you really can't measure a person. A person is like an egg. It was just laid. And then it does
Well,
things. But yeah, we can argue about that all day.
yeah, I was going to say, it depends.
I've had these arguments with people about like, of course you can be a bad person. If you do enough bad things, you're a bad person. And this,
my belief on that isn't in regard to amassing a score of how many good or bad things you've. I've looked into the face of evil. Like, I have looked into a face that I sincerely wondered if I was looking at a human being or a demon looking out at me from inside of a human being. And I don't know. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be 100% certain that I was just looking at a very cruel person, or a very messed up person, because I can't prove that. Right? I'm more inclined to believe that it was a human being with severe issues.
Yeah.
But I was definitely looking into the face of evil. This individual was about to commit a profoundly evil act that would scar me for life, and I will believe in good and evil people probably for the rest of my life because of that moment.
I'm more okay with calling someone evil than calling them bad, because evil.
Yeah, I don't really.
Evil is a very
specific,
deep, very specific, very deep concept. Bad is.
I don't really use the term
not.
bad person very much.
Or good.
But I do use.
I mean the same. Calling someone a good person or a bad person is, and it's an easy thing to call someone, but it's how children talk.
Yeah.
If you're an adult, you need to be a bit more specific than good or bad when it comes to a person's personhood.
Yeah.
Evil is fine. There are most definitely evil people in this world, and you do a disservice to the very idea of ethics by just calling them bad. No, they're straight up fucking evil. Don't give them the concession of merely calling them bad. They're downright fucking scumbags, or whatever. I guess it's all just relative terminology. Whatever. It's fine.
And many of them are in the highest positions in our government. So anyway, I got another super chat. Zaranx sent. He says this is about Mary Kay Letourneau, divorced and passed away from cancer. Of course, it was abusive. She was his teacher and noticed him, the boy that she raped and started a relationship with, when he was 7 years old. So, that's
a pedophile. That is a pedophile.
Yeah, that is a pedophile. Yeah. And there is a problem with female pedophiles that, like, a lot of people don't want to talk about even when it's obvious. Like, what was the name of the feminist that wrote Beautiful Boy?
Germaine Greer.
Yeah, Germaine Greer. That was creepy.
Yeah.
All right, but anyway.
She was creepy to me before I knew about that.
Yeah.
That honestly just made it worse.
Yeah, for sure.
But and yeah, there is a huge problem with female pedophiles. And imagine for a second not having any compassion for boys, right? Just take compassion for boys off the table, even though it should be center piece in the table, right? That should be the most important thing. But imagine there was no compassion for boys. So we throw out all of the statistics on their likelihood of self-destructive behaviors after being molested as boys. There is one thing that even the most self-serving, sociopathic, uncaring, uncompassionate women should care about. And that is that if a woman molests a boy and he survives the 8 times more likelihood that he's going to commit suicide, and he survives the potential for drug abuse and its potential for killing him, and he doesn't end up in jail for any of the violent behaviors that he's more likely to engage in because of it, and he doesn't end up having his sexuality so messed up that he can't do anything, he is more likely to become a rapist as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that every boy that is molested is going to, but in the history of the histories of grown men who rape women, they have a much higher incidence of having been molested by women as children than do men who don't rape women. So there is obviously a connection there. It's not the only thing, but it's the thing. And if you don't care about anything else, if you don't care about any of the things you should care about first, you should at least care about that. Self-preservation, anybody that doesn't have a sense of self-preservation is a little bit nuts.
Yeah. All right. So let us know what you guys think about that story in the comments. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of constructive criticism of this woman's behavior. But yeah, like I look forward to hearing from you. We're going to move on to the final story.
Probably hear a few words about certain types of mechanical devices.
Yeah. So yeah, wood chippers. Anybody?
That's probably what we'll hear.
Yeah. So So anyway, I look forward to your comments. Let's move on to the final story. The sensitivity readers are at it again. They went after Roald Dahl, the guy who wrote James
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory,
whole bunch of different,
Matilda. So many witches. I think
he's the Shakespeare of children's books. There's no other comparison.
They are great. I love the language he uses. It's kind of advanced, for a children's book. It's not stupid. So they came after him, and then they came after Ian Fleming, and they're trying to, they're rewriting or James Bond, or at least it's on their list of things. Of course.
Funnily enough, they didn't have to come after J.K. Rowling. She did it all herself. But they still came after her anyway. How weird.
And now they're coming after, I think it's, basically classic fairy tales. So book publisher Ladybird, famous for publishing many beloved classic children's books, has had sensitivity readers go over some of those classics. While Penguin has not commented on the readers' findings or if any classics will be changed as a result of their findings, certain insiders in the world of sensitivity reading have identified what they call outdated or harmful tropes. I remember the first time I heard the word trope, I think it was Anita Sarkeesian that said it, as well as a lack of diversity.
The word trope is a trope at this point.
Yeah, the word trope is now a trope. As well as a lack of diversity and inclusion in many of these books. Here are some of the recurring problems that the insiders say that sensitivity readers have spotted. Okay, first, so these are supposedly tropes these are children's books, okay, which are meant to be kind of simple. Love at first sight. So that's one. The concept of love at first sight is problematic because physical attractiveness and beauty take precedence above all other character traits, which we can't allow. Beauty itself is problematic. Similar to the previous problem, the old trope of the handsome prince or beautiful princess signifies that only the physically attractive are deemed worthy of note and attention.
Okay, Brian, I'm going to give you a choice. Either I can respond to each bullet point one at a time.
If you want to, we could do it that way.
Or we can wait until you've read through the whole write-up, and then I'll just gish gallop everything all at once. It's up to you.
Let's respond to each bullet point. I'm okay with that.
Okay.
The first two kind of go together, actually.
Yeah, that's why I waited until the end of the second one. All right, so, love at first sight and beauty. A lot of human interactions depend on first impressions, don't they? And until very recent history, the first sensory experience we ever got from anyone was sight. Most people didn't send each other letters, let alone chat room messages, as they do these days, on account of most people throughout history couldn't fucking read.
Mm-hmm.
And you're unlikely to hear anyone's voice before you see their face, especially in the thousands of years we existed as humans, when we had faces but no discernible vocal language, let alone written language. So if we're to countenance the idea that love exists in human beings as a biological species, we could perhaps leave some room for the idea that it can exist visually. And it doesn't just mean the way someone looks, statically. It can mean the way they walk, the way they hold themselves, the way they hold expressions, the way they change expressions. Beauty is not just skin deep; it is animated. It is contextual. And I'm going to go ahead and quote Roald Dahl, given that he seems to be in the crosshairs at the moment. Here's a passage from his timeless book, The Twits. Quote: "A person who has good thoughts cannot ever be ugly. You can have a wonky nose and a crooked mouth and a double chin and stick out teeth. But if you have good thoughts, it will shine out of your face like sunbeams and you will always look lovely."
Yep. I remember the arc for that. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
It still brings me to the brink of tears, that bit. See, but more often than not, that's what people mean by love at first sight. They're not just reading your face or your body, they're reading your thoughts. It's not an exact science by any means, but humans are a very empathetic species. We can read your eyes. We can read the subtle tells in the muscles on your face. We know the difference between a supermodel with a very telling case of resting bitch face and a slightly asymmetrical looking person with a delightful smile that lights up the room. So please, folks, don't buy into this idea that it's only fat, ugly, blue-haired man beasts we're up against. We're up against authoritarian cunts of all stripes, including skinny, conventionally attractive women who will use any excuse to control men, even on the protracted behalf of fat, ugly, blue-haired women who in any other context they would relentlessly mock. And you know it. All right, next.
Yep.
Well, here you go. When I'm in an unreasonable mood, I look like a serial killer. I'm not kidding. And when I settle down, I look like someone's grandma. And that's probably as close as I can get to personifying those words. But seeing the people around me, I think that that's correct. That for the most part, what you are on the inside will show on your face. And you don't have to be conventionally attractive for that to work. So this idea and love at first sight being problematic, they can go screw themselves, because I fell in love with my husband the first day I met him. It was devastating because we didn't get to be together for years, and I thought I thought it was never going to happen. And I thought it would never be right for it to happen at the time, because he was married. So I gave up immediately and went on to date people that I thought, I'm not going to be able to marry that guy because he's already married. and then his ex-wife decided that was going to change, and here we are. But it was still the love at first sight, and anybody that can try to convince me that that can't happen is going to have to fight my memories.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Well, we can come back to this at after I'm done going through all the bullet points, but I don't see how they're gonna change things. You'd have to basically write a new story. Taking Snow White as an example, the whole point of the story, the thing that gets everything moving, is the fact that Snow White is more beautiful, more fair than Queen Grimhilda, and the queen. Basically, she's trying to destroy her because she's jealous, and that's what it's about. So how are you going to do that without acknowledging the fact that Snow White is, beautiful? I don't know how they're going to work that out.
Well, and she's jealous because when she was young, she was the most beautiful lady in the land.
Right, she's getting older,
so that
yeah.
communicates, though, that a person who is beautiful doesn't necessarily have the best qualities of character. They can, but they don't necessarily.
No.
Because clearly, if the queen was beautiful, right? Yeah. She was beautiful, but she was cruel.
Yeah.
She didn't have the best character, best quality of character.
Yep. So, So anyway, I think that they're really. It's probably not going to look anything like whatever it was before. So, okay, next, pronouns. Of course, presumption of gender and pronouns are the norm in these children's books. In the future, gender-neutral language should be used.
Okay. I thought it was supposed to be about how people identify. If you create a fictional character from your own brain, do you or do you not get to specify how that character identified? You're literally specifying the entire identity of that character on account of you created them right down to their face and their body and their occupation and their personality and their names, their actual names. What the fuck is next? You can't call this character Jane Doe. What if they don't identify as Jane Doe? Well, what the fuck am I supposed to do? just call them character number #19. Please fill in as you see fit. Well, all right, but it's on you to remember what the fuck you're supposed to say. All 300 times you're reading that name to the kids in the first grade class to whom you're reading this. If you want to replace every he and every she and every zim, then you also have to replace every Jane Doe with I don't know, Abdul Lakitu Kim Jong masturbating mountain lion.
Did you say Lakitu?
Yeah.
From Mario Brothers?
It's a common Indian name.
Yeah.
There you go.
Fine, knock yourself out. See how many labor-saving devices you can relinquish in this text before it occurs to you that it's not exactly progressive. that you're having to replace every name with whatever name you like. Fuck you. Next.
All right.
Actually, I want to point something out here. What they're talking about doing here, you mentioned, Brian, that it would be impossible. They're going to completely rewrite these stories. So you're going to see...
Yeah.
You're going to see classic children's books. And this is a publisher, not an author. So they're going after multiple authors here from this publisher. So a broad variety of children's books where the story you remember is not going to be the story that gets told.
Yeah.
And then the use of the changing of pronouns and everything, and the use of gender neutral pronouns and so on, that is an effort specifically to introduce obfuscation of the English language to children at a young age in order to hinder their ability to think and communicate. It has absolutely nothing to do with sensitivity. It's not about helping
course
any
not.
classmates or any
No.
people in their lives that are different from them or in any
Mhm.
way, or anybody that's LGBTQ or any people who are non-binary or however they identify. It is strictly about hindering, about stifling, about
Yeah.
stunting their ability to think and communicate using basic English.
Mhm.
That's it.
They're just trying to hijack language.
No, they're trying to hijack brains.
Yeah.
If you want to force someone to comply with your authority, the easiest way to do it is to outlaw or eliminate dissent,
Yeah.
right? If you want to force compliance, getting rid of dissent is the first step.
Yep.
And you get rid of dissent when you take away the ability to formulate dissent and communicate dissent. You cannot dissent if you cannot communicate dissent, and you cannot dissent if you cannot formulate your thoughts on dissent.
Mhm.
You can't say no if no doesn't exist, and you
Mhm.
can't describe what you're saying no to.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing this. You
Mhm.
can tell by the third one, because otherwise they would just be talking about creating new writing with these standards, not eliminating old writing that didn't live up to these standards or down to these standards.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to try to get my hands on some classic fairy tales. I
Yeah.
have like the entire Grimm collection, but I don't know if like stories like Snow White or whatever, like if we know who wrote it, because I know that it's basically like been around forever, and it's been somebody was pointing out that they've changed the story like many times, and I get
Well, it
that.
existed.
I get that.
I mean, it predates Grimm, so
Yeah, I get all that, but the that's not really the point. Yes, the Snow White story has changed, but I don't think it was changed for the same reasons that it's being changed now, or at least that there's a proposal to change it. And I think that the intent is really important. So anyway, I mean the evil queen falling off a cliff like in the Disney cartoon, or being forced to dance in red hot iron shoes like in maybe one of the, if not the original version. It doesn't matter. She's defeated, and that's the point. So, but anyway, next, class. Many of these stories prominently feature kings, queens, princes, and princesses as the protagonists, which may lead children to believe that only those of higher social status can be important. Well, I mean, if they're higher status, they are important in a way.
Well, it's because stories almost always involve some kind of fall from grace, or at least the stories we refer to as tragedies.
Mm-hmm.
The concepts of tragedy and comedy have existed in stories since the ancient Greeks. Comedy is when lowly people find themselves in high situations, that whole fish out of water scenario.
Yeah.
Tragedy is when high class people find themselves in some kind of turmoil.
Like Hamlet or Macbeth
Yeah,
or something?
yeah. And either they fail to bring themselves out of that turmoil and they go on to die horribly along with most of their families. See, as you said, any given Shakespeare tragedy, or they overcome those hardships and they come out the other side with valuable lessons learned. See any given Disney movie. If a character is to experience a low ebb in their life, it stands to reason that the best way to portray this is with a character of high class. That way they have much further to fall than would any given peasant. That's why peasants enjoy stories about lords and kings falling into tragic disrepute. It's not that the upper classes are better people. It's that they have further to fall. They have more to lose. It makes for the maximum possible drama. You see, it's about dynamics. The greatest falls and the greatest rises. I didn't even have to get a degree in drama to understand this, people. It's fucking obvious.
Yeah.
All right, Nick.
And the thing about class is if you eliminate the understanding of class, you make it harder for people of the lower classes to protest against abuses by people of the upper classes who are in positions of power, right? So, of course, if you have people who are trying to eliminate the ability to dissent, you trying to basically dominate the entire population and create a dictatorship. Well, they don't want the filthy plebs to be able to stand up and say, "Well, you privileged dictator, you're doing this to us," because then we would have reason to actually march. We would have reason to uprise. We would have reason for all kinds of things that might be horribly terrifying to a dictator. And if you can't explain why you want to do those things, it becomes much more difficult to organize and do them.
Yeah.
So, you get rid of class.
Well, I mean, it could also simply be that there is something attractive and romantic about royalty. And I think that, if you're... They just kind of fit into an archetype, the handsome prince.
No. So real quick though, but these books are not just about these are not fairy tale stories. This publisher, like the Bunnykins, was like this family of bunnies that you would see them in various situations and stuff. That was them. That they had fairy tales, like you had Jack and the Beanstalk, you had
they're
Snow
not
White and
all
that,
about,
but
they're not all featuring kings
they
and
had
queens.
like the different color books of bedtime stories. They
Mhm.
had books about the seasons. They had a whole series of books from stories from the Bible.
Yeah,
So
I
I
was gonna
wonder what they're
say,
going to do with those.
well,
You
they're probably gonna throw them out altogether, if I'm guessing.
Yeah,
That was the other thing I
they
was gonna
had
add, is
stories that
that
were historical tales from like the UK and from uh, Rome, from all over Europe.
Yeah.
Just like there were all manner of, how are they going to eliminate
Well,
kings and queens from
they're
the
probably,
stories
yeah.
of like the stories of the times of kings and queens. They had a
Mm-hmm.
book about William Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
Like there were books for little kids, alphabet books, there were number books, there were books for older kids that weren't quite chapter books, as they call them, like little kid novels. But I mean,
Yeah.
they had such a variety of dozens and dozens of books, like books about science. This is going to be a pretty big endeavor. Books about sports, like
Yeah.
everything. This is
Well,
like
based on,
if they said they were going to go through and redo the Little Golden Books for
yeah, I don't
people,
know.
Gen Xers. You remember the Little Golden Books?
I remember them.
This is as big as the Little Golden Books, at least.
Yeah. So, what I was gonna say is, I think that there's also a religious angle with old fairy tales. I read, because essentially the idea is the king is closest to God, and he kind of symbolizes the will of God in a way. Now, of course, those are very antiquated ideas, but the idea of a benevolent ruler, I don't think is, and I think that's what they do in the fairy tales. Most of the time, the kings and queens are benevolent, wise, like good rulers. And sometimes you'll get like a tyrant, but most of the time they're, and actually a lot of the time they're also kind of background characters. Like the Sultan, from Aladdin, for example, or I don't know, like the king and queen from Sleeping Beauty. They might be, dumb because they didn't invite the Maleficent to the party, and that's what starts the whole thing up. But they're not bad people. And when I read through the Princess and the Toad for an episode of basically it was a show I did with Allison. And one of the things that I kept seeing over and over, because it was like the original Grimm version, at least the most, the best translation of the oldest version we had, was God as like a presence in the book reappears over and over and through, and oftentimes through the king. So I think that another aspect of this, and you can argue whether or not that's right or whatever, but I think that when they choose to put royalty in a story, they're thinking about the divinity of that, and it's like a part of it. That's why the king in The Princess and the Frog was like super wise. He knew what needed to be done. He could see through it all, right? So anyway, so I think that that could also be a part of it. I think that it's the idea that the king is close to God, and I think that these readers, these sensitivity readers, they hate that because they're usually like actively anti-theist, and they don't like patriarchy, and this is obviously like part of a hierarchy where the king is at the top and his wife is underneath him. So yeah, they'll probably do anything to undermine that, even though that might not be the explicit goal. So
ironically, they're very much into the prospect of globalism.
Yeah.
It's much like the Roman Empire did away with the idea of kings and replaced it with the idea of emperors. Mm-hmm. And now we're at the next stage where we're doing away with the idea of emperors, and we're going to go ahead and make a new world order where the whole world is one glorious nation with one glorious leader, and
one emperor.
That's gonna fix everything.
Yep.
Oh, of course.
All right. I got a super chat. Actually, yeah, I got a super chat from Sick Fox for £10, and he says sensitivity readers have determined that the existence of structure in the form of narrative is an aspect of patriarchy. Children shall be required to ruminate on the non-existence of beauty instead. Okay. So, thank you for that. I'm going to check really quick to see if I missed a super chow. No, I have not. And I will check Rumble. Hello, Mr. 0303. Okay, so we're good. All right, next, ageism. The good characters in these stories are almost always young and pretty, whereas the bad characters are portrayed as... that. This is exactly what Mike was saying about good and bad. Are portrayed as old and wicked, which could bias children towards associating evil with age.
Do you know, despite having said what I've said, you know what? I kind of agree. I would like to see more stories that teach us the lesson that young people are fucking assholes. Mm-hmm. Because they are, especially children. We blame old people for what happens to nations and peoples on a large scale, because old people are usually put in charge. But can you imagine what shit would look like if children were in charge? Yes, you can. And I'm not just talking about Lord of the Flies. I'm talking about what's happening nowadays, because that is increasingly what is happening nowadays. We're lowering the voting age. We're putting flapping 20-something activist morons in charge of our schools. We're capitulating to the demands of immature, image-obsessed fucking woman children, and shit is only getting more and more authoritarian as a result. So, by all means, give us some stories about how old people are sometimes right about stuff. Give us some stories about how children are the most self-centered, psychopathic humans on the planet, and that there's a reason we don't listen to them on important matters of ethics, because they fucking suck.
Yeah.
And so do teenagers, to be honest. So do 20-somethings at this point. But that's just because we've been infantilizing people for so long that the state of emotional childhood has been continually extended, even deep into people's 20s. because no one has the backbone to give these little shits a fucking slap in a video in Minecraft.
And one of the fundamental aspects of personhood is learning ethics and learning compassion, learning to exercise compassion in your engagement with other human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it well, if you do your personhood very well, you spend your whole life improving on that, like right up until your last days. And I've seen people do that. Like, and it's something that is great to behold when you meet somebody that does that continues to learn throughout their entire life and enjoys it and strives to continue to be better at compassion and ethics as they age throughout their entire life. And I don't know what the hell kind of stories these people's parents read them when they were children. But my parents read me stories that had older people that were wise and respected and caring and a great resource of information.
Well, they were wise,
and, worldly wisdom, so on. And I don't like, if you look at if you find the title list of books from this publisher and the little golden books and all of the other publishers that made children's books when Gen X were kids, and when our older cousins that were sort of between Boomer and Gen X, that were kind of like that love child generation, when they were kids, there are stories after stories after. Well, I mean, some of what I've described. Sports stories necessarily have coaches. Coaches are older, right? Stories out of history that have kings and queens and generals and other people that were in charge or that were in positions of power. Sometimes those are kings and queens that were very wise, and sometimes they're kings and queens that were very foolish. You get both ends of the spectrum. You get humanity in those stories because they're about real people. And, you have all of these different things across the spectrum. I don't know what they're going to do in terms of class and ageism with the Bunnykins, but all of those, different
They're probably
going
to just start with, like, the classic fairy tales, like the Snow White and the Sleeping Beauty. And
you have wicked old witches in some of those stories. And then you have fairy tales that aren't necessarily, like Grimm didn't touch the story of Stregonona. So you just have different varieties of things. These people are not responding to anything that they've read. They're anticipating stereotypes, and actually, for trying to get rid of tropes, their list is very tropey.
Yeah, it is. And, well, that's obviously true because of the next entry on the list. Diversity. Simply put, too many white people, not enough brown people. And there really isn't much to say to that, except,
there is.
There exists children's stories that feature, like, specifically, brown people / like other, I guess you could say, like, their roots are from another culture, and so you could just read those. But when they say diversity, they don't mean, oh, let's get an adaptation of Aladdin, or let's get an adaptation of, like, a story of what's the name of that spider god from Africa, or something from China.
Anansi?
Anansi, yeah. Or the something from Japan or China, or maybe even like
South America.
Yeah, South America.
There are folk tales. Every nation, every culture has
culture
folk tales.
All over the world has their own folk.
Right.
Yeah. Just write more books about black and brown people, or don't. That's fine. Art has many forms. It manifests differently in different cultures. African people seem to prefer music. particularly rhythmic music, and that's great. In the meantime, they're dealing with feminists attacking hip hop
Oh yeah.
for all its misogynist lyrics. As for brown people, I don't know. A lot of them are very committed to one particular book. The one about that warlord who founded Mecca. The one we're not even allowed to drop on the floor and accidentally scuff up a little bit. By all means, address the people who worship that book and see if you can fuck up their gender roles. Best of luck with that.
Well, you know, the feminist attack on Africa is more fundamental even than hip hop. They went straight for the foreskin. Like feminism is behind the exploitation of the HIV epidemic in Africa for fake circumcision research that convinced the United States that circumcision, that cutting some of the skin off of your genitals would prevent AIDS, because that's the most reasonable idea in the world, that cutting off part of your immune system would help prevent a disease from spreading. That's brilliant. Feminists, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. So, yeah, I mean, diversity, it just means, like, you know, we want to hijack your stories, but that's not the same.
When they say diversity, they don't mean diversity.
Yeah, they don't. No, they mean let fewer white people, fewer men.
Right.
So, all right, but anyway, plots. This is the last one. So, the nature of princesses needing to be rescued, mostly by male saviors, has been called problematic. The same was also said of characters who wish to be transformed, such as Cinderella wishing to become a princess. Well, she just wanted a dress. She didn't ask to be made into a princess. Or the Beast wanting to become human, as this drives the message to children that true happiness cannot be achieved while they are themselves. Yeah, but when the Beast was in a beast form, that wasn't himself, because he was a man and he was cursed. You know what a curse is? So she got this all wrong. Cursed. Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go. You guys can say whatever you want to that.
Yeah. And in the meantime, yeah, the women should not have to better themselves. Not even human women who are not beasts. That seems to be the moral of the story here, and it's incompatible with stories. Whether it's comedy or tragedy, any given story is about someone changing, or at least going through a change. Without something resembling that quintessential journey, all you have is the inconsequential adventures of some beige blob meandering their way through a beige environment, being unconditionally being unconditionally agreed with by every beige blob they pass by. Hello, beige blob. How are you? I'm fine, thank you, beige blob. I'm adequately satisfied with my position as a beige blob in a beige world. Good luck with the next chapter of the adventures of various beige blobs. I'm being sarcastic, but this is the future if we let this keep happening.
Yeah. I don't have a strong opinion either way.
Beige is going to be deemed too white. They'll have to come up with another color. But you can't say tan because that's cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
But yeah, this everything on their list could be satisfied by creating new stories. And historically, various groups that wanted to add things to the lexicon of children's reading and children's learning materials did that. And they did it with great illustrations and great writing and effort at creating something that would entice parents to buy the stories. And they would have little blurbs on the books about how, you know, this teaches children to not be afraid to learn more about other cultures and appreciate other cultures and share their culture and, you know, so on. One of my favorite books growing up was called The Sneely Mouthed Nerds, and the Wonder Octopus. And nobody today would allow that book within 1,000 yards of a school. They would treat it like a gun, but it was actually an anti-discrimination book. The basic story was you had a population that was persnickety and prejudiced and angry, and so they would bicker and fight with each other all the time over any little difference between each other. And they actually were so adamant about no differences, no unlike, no red hair, no different facial features, nothing, right? And so they actually created a home for nerds that were more different from each other than just the usual little bickery differences. And they called it the Home for More Different Nerds. And their population was just so cantankerous that they attracted a monster called the Wonder Octopus that fed on their attitude. In the meantime, this thing finds the Home for More Different Nerds, which is surrounded by a moat of tears from the nerds that were stuck in there crying about being in the Home for More Different Nerds. And while all of this is going on, you get a new kid in town who has a disability and is forced to walk on, they called them 2 poles. This would be the first problematic thing. They didn't call them crutches. So they gave him the nickname of Willie Two-Pole because he walked on crutches. And I had a schoolmate that walked on crutches. He was younger than me. He was in my brother's class. So it was interesting when, having read that book and then meeting this kid, it was like, oh, look, there's the hero from the story. Not really, but there's that commonality between this kid and the hero from the story. And you're to think with this hero from this story of overcoming hardship. The way he overcomes hardship is he gets attacked by the Wonder Octopus. He's in a group of kids that they were playing. He comes along and they decide to pick on him because he's different. He has to walk on 2 poles. And the Wonder Octopus comes up behind them and goes after them. This is another thing that would be very problematic for today's kids in this story. The Wonder Octopus eats nerds alive. So he comes up behind them and he snatches up Willie Two-Pole, who cannot run as fast as the other kids because of his 2 poles. But Willie has those 2 poles. He uses them as a weapon and props the Wonder Octopus's mouth open, and thereby stopping him from eating any more nerds. And the rest of the nerds decide he's their hero and they make him their king. And the goodwill that comes about because of this, they change their attitude about differences and realize how important it is to appreciate people for who they are and not how they look or how they're different, or possibly even enjoy those differences, right? The Wonder Octopus shrinks down to almost nothing, and oddly enough, the poles kind of shrank with it. And it's a great story in that it communicates everybody has value. One way or another, everybody has value. The story gives Willie value in that he has an alternative method for dealing with this creature that nobody else has ever thought of. He's had to overcome things using these 2 poles, and he makes use of them because he's used to using them all the time. Obviously, they built him new ones and everything. But in the end, these people would tear that story apart. They would go after how not politically correct it is in the way it discusses people with disabilities. They would go after the concept of the Home for More Different Nerds, probably would compare it to camps. And the comparison is not unfair, but they would fail to get the point in the story that those camps are a bad thing. And they would fail to get the point in the story that the judgmental people created a monster.
Mm-hmm.
They would go, they are the judgmental people. They would go after every aspect of that story and tear it apart.
Yeah.
But it's one of the best stories, and it's one that was written with a point of getting kids to understand there's more to the people around you than how they look or how they move or what difficulties they deal with in their lives. There's the person inside and how they deal with those difficulties, how they overcome things, how they think, how they feel, and who they are on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what great creative people do. If they want to preach and they want people to listen, they come up with a way of doing it that grabs the attention, communicates the story, and gives the person a thing to think about without having to feel like they've been preached at. These
Yeah.
guys are going to tear apart things that have done that for decades because
Of
they
course.
can't create. They can only tear down. That's
Yep.
all they have.
Yep. I
It
mean, I think
reminds-
that's the
it-
point, honestly, because like after they're done going through these books, they're not going to resemble the original stories. And even some of the edgier stuff that happened in the original stories, that's part of the appeal. So, yeah, this isn't really them trying to make stories more digestible for modern audiences. It's actually just vandalism. It's just cultural vandalism. They want to destroy the stuff, but you know, and that's all it is. I'm convinced. Like, they don't care. Like, their goals that are stated are not. They're lying. It's a trick. That's not what they're after. They want to destroy it, and they know that if they make it bland enough, then, you know, people will not want to read it, and then they'll forget what they're about, and like what value those stories had will be lost. And that's what they're hoping. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, but yeah, I mean, if they could, they'd come for the Bible. And I think right now there's just too much resistance. So it would be unwise. But they may do it for some versions. But anyway,
It reminds me of the story of Octopuff in Kumquat. You can make every effort to create an animation to convince children not to smoke, but no one will see it until 20 years later, when Red Letter Media cover it, and all it results in is the Wheel of the Worst getting destroyed, and then it's all on your head, people.
All right.
Some of our listeners will understand all those references.
That's a reference.
And they'll be like, so what are you doing that? Sorry.
No, it's okay. So I got to read through at least one Rumble rant from NobaFan21, who gives us $1 and says they complain about pretty people. So when will they make the call for moderately physically attractive women find butt ugly men hotter than the guy with 4 6s? Oh wait, feminists hate that. Okay. So thank you, NobaFan. Nothing.
So,
Yeah, nothing.
So does this mean they're going to do the story of the Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Well, I was going to mention Quasimodo as an example of an ugly character that's not evil.
Yeah, a character that's definitely, by all convention, completely unattractive.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, so if you guys have any examples of fairy tales that like don't really like that basically like contradict what these people are claiming about fairy tales, tell us in the comments. It could be from Disney, it could be from the book version, you know, whatever. Just like any suggestions or thoughts on that. All right, so like you said, Jack and the Beanstalk, and that was my initial thought was, well, Jack's not a prince. He's like a, you know, he's like essentially a peasant, you know. So I still have a little bit more to do on the write up though. So they continue, but it isn't all about things that must either be removed or changed. They have ideas for what should be added as well. Virginia Mendez, author and sensitivity expert, what is that? Wants to add gay couples. Mendez states, quote, by having gay couples, isn't that Frozen? By having gay couples in the story, we help debunk the heteronormativity that already reigns in most of the messages kids receive. Not only is it kind and liberating for kids that happen to be gay, but also for the children
Kids,
of...
fuck it, skip
Okay,
it.
I was gonna say you can't. They're kids that happen to be gay don't care that they're gay,
Yeah.
but they do exist.
Or they don't know it yet. I mean, it depends on...
No, I knew. I knew.
All right.
I knew I was bisexual from a very early age.
All right.
I just didn't know how to define it, and I went on to deny it for a while because of some things that happened. But you can know it. It's just I don't think it would have been very helpful to me to have stories like these people are going to write. I think it would have been
how old
traumatic.
were you? How old
7.
were you? 7? Bloody hell.
Yeah.
Okay. But also for the children of gay couples or those who have gay family members. Normalizing other relationships in books doesn't take away from the story. It doesn't have to be evident about it, rather. Just letting them exist in that capacity as characters of the books, offering to change boys and girls when the character of the teacher is speaking to children, so everyone is included, and to skip the constant separation, placing people into boxes and reinforcing the idea that those are two very different things. Them and us, topics that are more prevalent today, like racial diversity, showing people with disabilities, or presenting people with counter-stereotypical roles, jobs, or attitudes, not only make more people feel seen and represented, but also all of us more aware and empathetic. And the power of these conversations feeds kids' natural curiosity and enhances their critical thinking invaluably. End quote. Yeah.
The first thing I should point out is when they write stories about being gay for kids, they're not writing children's stories about gay kids. Like when you're 7, I was 7 when I knew, and
Yes? Hannah? Mike, can you guys hear me? Oh. It's Discord is being a shitbag. Let me try to re-enter. Hold on, guys. I can't. Okay, there I am.
Sorry.
I'm back.
There you are. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to think about those things. And it's not. It's abuse to expose a kid that young to stories about sex.
Yeah.
And when we were growing up, there was a term that was used in novels for girls about girls and girls' friendships, bosom buddies. That for years, lesbians have held that term was a term for girlfriends, not girls who are friends, but girls who are girlfriends. And there are some stories where it's pretty evident. And
Sure.
so this idea that there are no stories about gay kids, I'm sure that there are probably stories where there's similarly evident closeness. And in fact, when we went through in the 80s sort of a period of polarization and people's attitudes towards sexuality, a lot of old stories where boys were very close to each other and actually had emotional intimacy that you could understand in the story as emotional intimacy. Like those stories started to get scrutinized as too potentially gay. So these are things that existed. They predate this, and these people are doing exactly what feminist girls do when they become girl gamers after there's been, years and years and years of some gamers happening to be female. And they come in and they piss on everybody that was there before them, and they pretend that they are the first people of their type to take an interest in this particular area. And it has to change to suit their sensibilities because it wasn't welcoming to people of their particular demographic prior to their entry into it. And again, piss on all of the people of their demographic that were part of it before them. And that's what they're doing to books. That's what they're doing to stories. And their idea of writing things for boys and girls to understand diversity and inclusion and all these other terms that they throw out that don't mean what they mean when these people say them, is to hit you over the head with a sledgehammer. They cannot be subtle. They cannot be age appropriate. They cannot be just generalized in any way, shape, or form. No, you can't have kids that have crushes and kids that have acceptance of differences between themselves and other kids. Nope, you have to go straight for blowjobs and cunnilingus and all of the man-hating and all explicit stuff, like absolute in elementary school libraries. That's not helpful. It doesn't serve the interests of children who maybe are starting to become aware that where maybe their friends say, well, I can't talk, my mouth gets dry and I can't talk around this person of the opposite sex, that happens to them around someone of the same sex. Like they're going through exactly the same process. They're just going through it with a different person or a different demographic than their friend.
Yeah.
That doesn't serve that person's interest in understanding that what's developing within them is normal and acceptable. And even if it's not the standard, it's still okay. That doesn't help. Mm-hmm. It makes it out like in order to be gay or half gay or queer or trans or anything like that, you have to be a porn star. Mm-hmm. You have to be or the other direction, you have to be perverse. Mm-hmm. There's like you have to either be the party animal type or you have to be the hiding in the corner doing bad things type. Mm-hmm. Right? That's and you can't just be somebody who has feelings.
Well, yeah, because they don't present gay people or people of color or women even as like normal human beings, because their identity category has to be like front and center all the time. That's the reason why those characters are usually the least interesting, because the only thing that matters to them about the gay character, the gay man, is that he is a gay man. And so that's the only, we don't know if he has hobbies, we don't know what his job is, none of that stuff matters. He's gay. And that's what you're going to hear about. And they think that this is like a win, right? Oh, it's a black man. Let's put, let's have him get pulled over by the cops and he gets arrested even though he didn't do anything. Like they do this all the time, and that becomes what it means to be black or gay or a woman, right? Yep. And it's like
dick is a hobby. That's all it is.
Yeah, and they think that what they're doing is making an acknowledgement, like a Native American character on a show or in a movie. He has to like at some point complain about like how his land was taken or something, and I'm not kidding. Like this is just like what they do, because they have so little understanding of how real people are. And the truth is that, I mean, if I met a native guy, right, for example, and he started complaining about the white man, I would just stop talking to him. I'd be out of there. But I would guess that 9 times out of 10, or at least like 5 times out of 10, a native man who's my same generation, I'll probably get along with him just fine, and I may not even learn that he's like native unless he tells me, because it wouldn't even occur to me to wonder about that. So, but anyway, I do have. I thought I had another super chat. I may have read it already. I'm just gonna look at it really quick. No, there's nothing else. But, there is a little bit more to the write-up. So give me a second here. I'm sorry that this is like... Wait, did I close that window? Oh, I guess I finished it. Yeah. So, all right, cool. So we're going to end the show here. And this was kind of a long sausage. Not going to lie. We went for 2 hours and some change. But we're going to look at this article in the Patron show about April O'Neil in the new Ninja Turtles. And this is actually a good example of what we were just talking about. So thanks, guys, for coming on the show today. Before I do my normal outro, again, if you have any comments, I'd like to hear them. So please leave us a comment. Tell us about, good examples of that counter the narratives from, fairy tales or children's stories or whatever. I prefer that they were like old stories and not like, oh yeah, did you see this brand new movie? No, I would prefer that they be older. Although some newer films do a good job. I mean, mostly it's like DreamWorks that's doing that. So, all right. So anyway, thanks guys. I look forward to your comments. If you like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications so you know when our shows go live. Please leave us a comment, and most importantly, or at least I think it's most importantly, share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.